Good afternoon and welcome to today's Mindful Moment webinar. This is the first Mindful Moment webinar we're doing and a series of them which we'll be doing every month going forward. My name's Evan Judge and I'm going to be the host for today, and I've got a great panel with me who I will introduce now. So I've got Harjeet Moore and John from Government Services. And we've also got Tatiana from the nutrition team. So just want to welcome them all. Thank them for taking the time out to spend today with us and talk about sleep. So everyone needs sleep, but many of us have problems with it. We all know that terrible feeling. I might have had that terrible feeling last night where I couldn't actually get to sleep and I was tossing and turning and I was thinking about how tired I am going to be today. And then it created this whole vicious circle of not being able to sleep and thinking about how tired you're going to be. So for the next 30 minutes, we're going to kind of talk about sleep and what we can maybe do to help ourselves in establishing a good sleep routine and have some sleep hygiene in our lives. So my first question is going to be to you, Harjeet, if you don't mind. And if you think about your own sleep, if you have a bad night's sleep, what do you think normally contributes to that?
Thanks, Evan, and hi everybody. Thank you for joining. So if I think about the times where I kind of don't have a good night's sleep, there's always contributing factors. Some of them I can control, others I can't. So if it's the likes of my husband snoring, my son snoring from the other room that I hear and that wakes me up. I've got cats that try and enter into my bedroom at night, so that wakes me up. So some of those things I can manage. You know, I do sometimes in the night put a pillow over my husband's head and try and get him to stop or give him a bit of an elbow. But other than that, I do find that things like if I eat late at night, my food's not digesting, I just really struggle to fall asleep. If I've kind of got a lot on my mind in terms of work and I can't switch off. And on the positive side, sometimes you know the feeling when you're excited about something for the next day. So that's almost like a good way of not, having my sleep disturbed. But they're the factors mainly for me that affect me, that I know that I haven't had a great night's sleep. What I have started to do more recently, particularly the past year, I'm really into my Fitbits and kind of like my tracker. So I have actually started to track my sleep now, just to see, making sure I get the minimum amount of sleep. Also kind of start to look at the data when it looks at kind of your light sleep, your deep sleep, and how many disturbances you've had. And that has actually started to help me. I do have some more tips, but I will share them with you at the end.
Great.
Thanks, Evan.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's interesting how technology can help us, but also hinder us when it comes to our sleep. So it'll be interesting to find out how you're getting on with your Fitbit and stuff later. John, working from home this period, a lot of us have struggled with that space between time and between work and home, and that's obviously having a knock-on effect because we're not necessarily having that period to switch off. How have you found it? Are you able to disconnect? And if you are, what have you been able to do to introduce a routine to help you do that?
Okay, that's fine. Thank you, Evan. So I think firstly, if we're talking about increased working from home, we should really just acknowledge all of the people that in our teams who've continued to commute to work in a year in which travel's been really, really difficult, and the workplace has been in a constant state of change. So I take my hat off to all of those of you that have continued to go to work. I do find it really interesting that at the start of the pandemic, there was a general feeling from people on social media and what have you, who were saying that working from home was great. They've reduced their commute time. They've never been more productive. And as someone who was used to working from home sort of 1 to 2 days a week anyway, I kind of knew all those things were true. But if you fast forward 12 months, and the other week, Rishi Sunak interestingly made the claim that many workers will quit if they're not allowed back into the workplace. And whilst I'm not 100% sure that that's true, it does demonstrate that you can have way too much of a good thing, can't you? And I think that's kind of where we found ourselves. And so why is that? I guess one of the appeals from working from home is that you can get things done. You can get out of bed, you can put the kettle on, you can get straight to work and start doing something else, can't you? So you don't have to have that commute to work. But the big problem is when is it time to stop? Is it 5 o'clock? Is it when you're hungry? Is it when you've finished all your work? And the reality for me has been the realization that if you work from home every day, then every day just becomes the same. And unless you're careful, you never switch off. You never think about something other than work. And, you know, I'd sum that up. A good friend of mine told me the other day that the only reason he's combed his hair this year is because he has to put his screen on for Teams calls. So that's kind of how life has changed, isn't it, in the last year? And we've all kind of got used to it. So I suppose about a month into the pandemic, I got to a place where I just needed to force a new routine into work from home. I've been a runner for a number of years now, so typically my day starts with a run, sometimes a walk, always outside. And yeah, it's lovely now that the mornings are lighter and it's a bit warmer. So you have to get out of the house every day. And if you do this, you don't feel a pressure to get some exercise later in the day, but obviously everybody needs to do what's right for them. And then I can concentrate on work. And then I find it easier to have that divide and spend some family time, because I think the other thing I've been acutely aware of is that if you're on Teams calls all day and you're asking people to be quiet and not to go into certain parts of the house, it becomes quite disruptive for everybody else as well, doesn't it? And I also try to have a lunch break where I stop and have a bite to eat and go into the back garden for a few minutes, or just go and post a letter, or just get some fresh air. But I think the main thing is that I've become very disciplined about stopping for an evening meal at a decent time, usually around sort of 6:30 at the latest, and get together with all of the family. So I guess the question is if we're here to talk about sleep, why am I telling all about this? Because I think it's because around last May, everything in terms of routine was just out the window, because the lines were just too blurred. I grazed all day, the working day just obliterated everything. And in a household in which we were spending way more time together than we were used to, it was all a bit of a strain. I've got 2 teenage sons, and we just needed to adapt. Which we did quite easily once we realised the problem, actually. And very quickly, we all adapted our routine and allowed us to get a new normality, and evenings became much calmer. And then we were all much more ready when it was time to try and get some sleep. I'll admit that in the last year, I've discovered the joys of binge watching Netflix series, which is something I've probably never done before. And in the early days, there were some fairly intense games of bingo and competitive board games, things like that. But we seem to have got over that now. And I think the key for me, though, is to have the discipline to admit that you need to plan your day around all the important things that you need to do, all those component parts. So sleep, exercise, eating, work, a little relaxation and fun, and then sleep again. And in a day when you commute to work, I find that I always did this naturally, but I had to force it into my home routine. Subconsciously, you plan the day, don't you, when you go to work? And you need to take that time to plan the day, what you're going to do from all of those component parts at the beginning of the day, even if you don't have that commute. So I think the perception that working from home is freedom can be a real red herring, and work can just take over and obliterate everything. So have a time, put a time, write it down, look at your watch, but have a time in which you're going to switch off. And it may vary from day to day, but try and stick to it wherever you can.
That's great. Thank you very much, John. Yeah, I've definitely found that if I don't set some alarms during the course of the day, I normally get Alexa to just set some alarms for me during the course of the day, just to remind me that actually there's a laugh outside of this room, and I need to go and be a part of it. So from a nutritional point of view, obviously the food we eat and the things we drink are going to have an impact on our sleep and our sleep patterns. So Tatiana, what do you think? Have you got any tips on food and drinks that we should avoid later in the day to help with our sleep?
Yeah, definitely. So most of us need about 7 to 9 hours of sleep each night. And if we're not getting this, it can have serious implications on our health. So our physical health as well as our mental health. So if we're not getting enough sleep, it can increase our risk of developing type 2 diabetes, heart disease, as well as obesity. But it's also linked to anxiety and depression as well. So it is really important that we start to focus on our sleep and prioritise it. And it is a new area of research at the moment, but it's thought that some people, if they don't get enough sleep, they're more likely to have actually a bigger appetite due to the fact that their leptin levels increase. And leptin is a hormone which basically makes us more hungry. And then we're also more likely to snack on high fat, salt and sugar foods if we are sleep deprived. So it's really important that we get enough. In terms of foods to avoid, obviously the most obvious that we think of is caffeine, and this is because it's a stimulant, so it increases our levels of cortisol, which is a stress hormone, and this, if we have too much of it in our system, can stop us sleeping. So it's really important to remember that caffeine is not just found in coffee, but also tea. Things like green tea, which you wouldn't assume has caffeine, actually has quite a lot. As well as things like cola, energy drinks, chocolate and hot chocolate also have caffeine. So it's also really important to consider this. So if you fancy a warm drink before you go to bed, you could try decaf. Decaf does have a bit of caffeine in still too. So maybe think about herbal teas like peppermint or chamomile, that could be good. And then things like alcohol can really have an impact on our sleep and our sleep cycles. So you might feel like having a nightcap can send you off to sleep and help you sleep really well and sleep quickly, but actually it has the opposite effect, and it can actually disrupt our REM sleep, and this is where our brains are restoring everything and processing all our memories from the day. So alcohol is probably best to avoid close before bed. And then things like eating too much or really large meals can sort of give us digestive discomfort and disrupt our sleep. So try not to eat 1 to 2 hours before bed. I know it's difficult with working hours and fitting in other activities and everything, but if we can try not to eat really close to bed, that's good. If you're really hungry, maybe go for a small snack like a banana or a slice of toast or something. Eating too much sugar, again, can maybe disrupt our sleep. It can cause us to wake up in the night a few times. So again, trying to limit our sugary foods. And then high fat or fried meals, really spicy foods, as well as alcohol, could also be linked to heartburn, which can be linked to insomnia and sleep apnea. And then as well as this, smoking and nicotine can also disrupt our sleep. So there's a few things that we can avoid, but I think my main advice would just be try and have a healthy and balanced diet. So things like basing our meals on starchy carbohydrate foods, so like bread, rice, pasta, choosing whole grain brown versions where possible to boost up our fibre intake, making sure you're getting your 5 a day with lots of different fruits and vegetables. And this will help us get all the vitamins and minerals that we need. And these vitamins and minerals are really important in helping us make our chemicals and hormones, which can impact our sleep. And then just decrease consumption of high saturated fat, sugar and salt foods, or just have these in moderation. And then as well as thinking about food, it's really important to think about exercise as well. So getting a balance of exercise is really good in helping us sleep better. But actually, it's a really interesting point, because if we exercise late in the evening, this can also impact our sleep. So exercise can increase our body temperature, and our body actually needs to cool down to help us get to sleep. So if you're going to exercise, try do it in the morning or late in the afternoon, just to give our body that sort of bit of extra time to sort of cool down and prepare for sleep.
That's great, thank you. There was loads of good advice in there, and the one thing that kind of sticks out with me is that balance between your working day and your sleeping and your exercise, and getting all 3 of those things in the right amounts is good. So while I've still got you on the screen, I was going to ask each of you to share one tip for a better night's sleep. I mean, we've given loads of tips already, to be fair. People are definitely getting value for their money today, but what would you say is one of your tips, Tatiana?
I would probably say get into a routine. So in the same way, when you wake up, you have a routine to get a shower, get dressed, have a coffee. It can be really useful to have a wind down routine. So try and get into the habit of going to the bed at the same time each night. Take the time, maybe an hour before bed, to do something calming. So listening to music, reading a book, meditating, trying mindfulness. It's a really good idea to try and avoid using your smartphones, your tablets, your devices, as this can make us feel a bit more awake. And yeah, so just try and just have a good chilled hour and have that same routine each night, and help our bodies sort of learn the routine and the rhythm of our sleeping patterns.
That's great. Thank you. So I'll jump back to John now, if that's okay. And John, have you got any tips that you would like to share?
I think the big one for me is reducing screen time, particularly in the evening, which I find really impacts my sleep. So I try to avoid screens an hour or so before I go to bed. And I think back to Tatiana's point about just making sure that you try and go to bed and sort of get up at the same time and get a sleep pattern.
Great, thank you. And then Harjeet.
Yeah, of course. So there's a couple of things that I started to do in the past kind of 6 months. So it's just simple things like, so I sleep with a weighted blanket now. I love my kind of pillow sprays, kind of the lavenders and those kind of calming smells. So I do kind of tend to spray that everywhere. I've also got like a salt lamp, which I put lavender drops on as well. So just to make it a kind of the room a bit more of a warmer environment. So our bed is fairly new, it's about 2 years old, so we did make sure we got the correct mattress for it as well for comfort. And also my pillow, because I sleep on my side, I've got one of those pillows that's especially for people that sleep on their sides. So I think all those type of things have helped massively. But the other thing that I do tend to do is a lot of exercise, and I think just pick it up on Tatiana's point, it does help, it's helped me control my sleep a lot better and get into that routine. But also my fitness trackers that I absolutely love, I actually wear two, which does look at kind of it measures the level of strain you can do. So I try and work out at least 4 or 5 times a week. Firstly, it was to lose the lockdown weight, which I've lost. But even before that, I love my physical activity. And, in order to kind of have an impact on sleep, it doesn't have to be intensive. Anything that's kind of moderate, even if it's going for a walk or just kind of getting some fresh air and stuff like that, it will help. But no, I think there's lots of things like this that kind of, it's definitely improved my sleep pattern. And, also from a lack of sleep, I used to get quite a lot of headaches. So I've also found that just keeping hydrated, but stopping at a certain point so I don't need to get up in the middle of the night, again has helped me massively. And during the day, if I can kind of feel myself kind of a headache coming on, I do have something which is a bed of nails, which I just kind of lie on for 10 minutes and just kind of take a few deep breaths and just kind of think about nothing if I can. I normally think about food, if I'm honest. So that's the thing I always think about. But no, I'd really encourage everybody to kind of hopefully, feel like you can take some tips away from kind of what the panel have kind of suggested. Thank you, Evan.
No, pleasure. That bed of nails sounds a lot more like hardcore than what it is.
It's not. I'll quickly show everybody because I do have it here. So it literally is. It's just a soft cushion, so it's not thick. So it just looks like that. But it's absolutely amazing to lie on if you've got headaches. I do also have, I have the pillow as well.
Okay.
Again, you can see it's not too hard, but I do find it helps me massively.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Well, I think there's been loads of great tips today and some really good advice shared with everyone. So thank you very much to my panel. I suppose for me, it is very much about making the room in which you are sleeping comfortable for you. I think Harjeet's environment sounded very relaxing and very chilled, and I'm very similar. I need to have good vibes in the room in order to be able to fall asleep quietly and peacefully at the end of the day. I just wanted to share with everyone a few things that you might not be aware of. We've just released a mindfulness Mindful Moments toolkit, if you like, and as part of that, each month we'll be delivering a new topic, and the idea is that those will back onto these webinars that we're doing on the second to last Wednesday or the last Wednesday of every month. And this month's one was sleep, and next month we'll be looking at stress. But also, if you would like to find out anything else about sort of the wellness side of things that we're doing, Tatiana, Leanne, Katrina are doing some amazing work on our YouTube page. So We Are ESS. but also now Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, I think it is, and Facebook. We've got material available on there too. So yeah, if you ever need some advice or any tips or anything like that, I would suggest having a look at those in the first instance, and you'd definitely be able to find something on there. So that's great. And then if anyone needs any additional support or advice, there is the ess.wellness at compassgroup.co.uk, where you can go and email Leanne and Katrina and Tatiana and be able to ask them some questions, get some guidance from specialists in the business. And just, if you haven't already, please sign up to the wellness newsletter, which is out on the first Monday of every month, and it's a great read actually, and there's loads of great advice in there. Again, as this March was Sleep Awareness Month and World Sleep Day was a couple of weeks ago, it's really we just kind of focus in on those big campaigns and those big bits of wellness activity for you guys to share with your teams, but also to take some tips from for yourselves. So like I said, our next mindful moment will be on stress, and that will be on Wednesday, the 28th of April. We're going to have another guest panelists, as well as representation from Harjeet and Leanne. And Leanne, Tatiana wants to tell me that I've put something in wrong.
No, not at all. Just wanted to also add, we've recently launched a new mental health first aid newsletter as well. And that sort of highlights all of the things that we're doing around mental health. So if you'd like a copy of that emailed to your inbox, just drop us an email on the wellness email as well. And I think that comes out on the 3rd Monday of each month. So just before our Mindful Moments webinar.
Great, thank you very much. Well remembered. So there's loads of resources available. If you'd like to join us for the Wednesday, the 28th of April, that'd be great. And if you've got anything, or if you've got any questions or topics that you would like to ask going forward, please feel free to drop us a note in the ESS Wellness newsletter. And I've just looked, we've actually got a question here. With caffeine, what is the recommended cutoff time in the day before sleep to have caffeine? So Tatiana, do you want to pick that one up quickly? We've got 2 minutes to spare.
Yeah, that's fine. So there are actually no current guidelines around caffeine. It's something that's really individual to each of us. The only guidelines that are out there at the moment are for pregnant women. But I think generally, as a rule of thumb, some people try to avoid caffeine after 12, but again, it's just really individual, and it's finding out what works for you and how it disrupts your sleep and that sort of thing.
That's great. Thank you very much. So there's no other questions that I've missed. So just want to say one more thank you to the panelists. Thank you to John, Tatiana and Harjeet for taking the time to prepare and obviously get involved today. And we will be seeing you on our next Mindful Moments on the 28th of April. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Bye everyone. Thank you.